Oh, that was quick. I thought that was going to run on for longer. Never mind. I'm here, and so is Tercia. I'm sweating because we've just had world-breaking temperatures of over 30 in September. Never happened before. And poor old Tercia, she's shivering. Hello, Tercia.
Yes, I'm shivering, and if the internet connection is dodgy, I suspect it's because there's gale force winds outside. I'm really holding on to, well, I hope the roof lasts. So if I disappear, it might be the winds.
Well, I hope it doesn't fall on you. We don't want to see that live.
Well, it might be interesting. So let's hope for the best.
Might get a lot of reviews. So let's introduce Jason. How the devil are you, Jason?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're great, thank you. And do you have anything to report about the weather in your part of the world? Because you're in the state of Michigan, aren't you?
Yes, I am in Michigan. That is in the northeastern part of America. At this point, it's pretty cloudy out, but it's not too cold. And I'm not necessarily used to. I haven't been used to the four seasons lately. I've been down in Florida, which is much south from here and much more warmer.
And much more mosquitoed and alligated, too.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. I've been there a few times, and I've got no wish to go there again.
No.
Anyway, you were going to tell me the name of your channel, because you're also a YouTuber, aren't you?
I kind of began that as so that was when the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, a lot of my live shows were canceled, and the only thing that stayed was doing lectures. But then I had to do them over the computer whenever I did them, and I went from doing like 4 a month to 1 every other month. It was everything had changed. And so a couple of friends of mine that did YouTube channels, they told me, you should do a YouTube channel. So I started a YouTube channel. I did 3 episodes, and they were called Intellectual Kung Fu because they were meant to explain how logic is used to evaluate arguments that we encounter often on Facebook and social media. And I got 3 episodes out: The Burden of Proof, I think another one was Gnosticism and Agnosticism, and then the other one was what makes an argument logical, and I was referring to validity and soundness. And but
so do you want me to promote that channel, or do you want to keep it secret?
No, I actually don't even know how to get into it. I'm making a new one right now.
Okay.
I'm making it but it's really fun. I like to do it, and when I have time to do it, I definitely do it.
Yeah, I agree, it's fun. Of course, we all started back in the days of lockdown, and when I used to run a show in a pub, and then of course
nice.
Then of course we were stopped from doing that, so I turned it into a show online, and I haven't stopped since. We actually can go back to pubs now, and I do organize some rather bigger events, which I'd like to promote here. Yes, they're called Changing Minds in Changing Times, and I do it as president of Atheism UK, which is my day job, you might call it, and in conjunction, co-sponsored with Lawrence Krauss's Origins project. So we got together and we did our first one in June, and we had as guest speakers, we had Richard Dawkins, Lawrence obviously, and an ethicist friend of ours, Blay Whitby, the director of the Faculty of Neuroscience at University College London, lovely lady called Professor Sophie Scott. And we also had the president of the National Secular Society. So we had a good show. We ended up auctioning a painting, an original painting of Christopher Hitchens, and having a nice curry while people queued to get their books signed by the eminent authors. It was a really good do. So on the strength of that, we're doing it again in the Midlands near Birmingham. And you can still get tickets. You want to fly over, there's a few tickets left. It's the end of September. 25th of September. Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss, A.C. Grayling, another eminent philosopher you've probably heard of.
Yeah, I will say that I think The Selfish Gene was probably one of the most profound books on evolutionary biology ever written. I'm a huge fan of Dawkins.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that this hand has shaken his.
Yeah, I am jealous.
And I haven't washed it since, of course.
I wouldn't have either. he's an impressive character. I like him a lot.
Anyway, you can see the videos of our June event on atheismuk.com channel. So there
Excellent.
you go. Plug for that. You can see all the presenters doing their presenting. It's really good. Okay, so that's enough about me, really, isn't it? And you've given us a bit about you, so can you give us a bit more about you? Because we normally start these interviews by asking our guest, how you got to be the person you are today.
Okay, so I kind of started early in my career as an entertainer, like pretty early. I did male modeling for a short time while I was on a stunt team in Anaheim, California, and it was called Fusion, and we did like just small stunts for like commercials and little television things, and when I decided to go to med school, and I ended up dropping out to go on tour as an illusionist, but at the same time it was so difficult. Like it was so difficult. It was like they were pulling a prank on us or something. And I sometimes I feel horrible for doing it, but I ended up going on tour for quite some time, and academics was always a big part of what I did. Being a skeptic and being an illusionist has a pretty heavy relationship because of what's involved with it. And quite some time ago, I went to my old philosophy professor and was talking to him about a paper that I was working on, and it had to do with the difference between a trick and an illusion, and why illusions are more fundamental to us, because it's an example where the brain is misinterpreting the information it's receiving from the eyes, rather than someone taking advantage of like social expectations, and it was really interesting. I had a lot of fun with that. And then I started working with someone here in Michigan. His name is Neil Hartman. He's one of the academic directors for Michigan. And I handed in a lecture to him a while ago and started doing that for various academic institutions. But in Florida, I did a lot of debates, a lot of academic debates. But when I got the opportunity to debate a professor of logic at a Baptist college, that was a new experience, because there was a lot of like really weird things that he was saying that I was really shocked that you could say as a philosophy professor. And it was just really weird. And
I'd love to have been there. Is there a video of this? Can we see it?
I actually have the video. It's on a computer of mine. I might need my brother to help me pull it out. Not a lot of schools in America allow you to film for public or personal like uses or anything, but luckily at the religious like colleges, they do let you. They let me. So I have video. But he ended up I talk about the laws of logic a lot, and when I brought it up to him, he said, you forgot the fourth law of logic. And I was really curious about what he meant. And I was like, what do you, because I've heard people mention the fourth law of logic before as like the sufficient evidence thing. And but he said it was inductive reasoning. And I was shocked.
We don't normally class that as a law of logic, do we?
No, we don't. It was, and I even now I'm kind of speechless because I'm not really sure what would lead up to that confusion. It's baffling to me. Especially when you compare deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning.
Yeah.
It's let me make sure my plug on my computer is plugged in fully here. I think there we go. Excellent.
Well, your vision and audio is good so far,
But
and Tessie hasn't disappeared yet.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Tessie,
if
you were
you
saying
see,
something about the law of non-contradiction, weren't you? Do you want Jason to mention what he thinks about that?
well, I just wanted to,
Oh,
because of what the Baptist minister said about inductive reasoning being the fourth law of logic, or it's because I'm really nervous about the word.
oh dear.
What that minister said reminds me of something that William Lane Craig said not too long ago about proportioning the evidence for the resurrection. If there's 1 in a million chance, it's a good idea to believe it. So I mean, funny things do happen
Yes.
in certain circles, but it's so nice to somebody. I don't know if, in my opinion, to call somebody a philosophy nerd is a compliment, not
Yes.
So I just want to put that out there. It's definitely not an insult. It's meant as a compliment. So I'm not even an armchair philosopher. I listen and I read a little bit, but I'm more concerned with trying to understand things in the real world. And
Yes.
I've heard a lot about the law of identity and the law of non-contradiction. So I don't know if that's number 1, 2, or 3. It's obviously not 4, but
so yeah, the law of identity, the law of excluded middle, and the law of non-contradiction. Those are the 3 that I'm familiar with, and I hear people mention the law of sufficient evidence. The only reason I never include that in with the 3 is because that's more in relation to us as people. That's nothing that would really exist if we didn't exist. And you can pretty much separate everything into these 2 categories of subjective and objective, whereas objective is anything that exists regardless of whether or not there's a human mind or any mind, thinking mind there to evaluate it, and subjective being something that requires any thinking mind to evaluate it. But I didn't hear your full question, but because it cut out a bit. But yeah, I do have I do hold and regard the laws of logic as something very special and even different than I love that so much. Even different than the regular laws of regular laws in any case. And because here's what you can say about the laws of logic that you can't say about even the laws of physics. Whereas and so we look at laws as either descriptive or prescriptive, where there are laws that we discover and describe to others, being descriptive laws, and then we have prescriptive laws, these laws that we invent and prescribe. And you take these laws of physics, and it's like these laws are just very true, but they might be different in like a different reality or something. Who knows? They might, maybe there's somewhere so far out in space, so far out that we learned that gravity is different. And of course, if nothing existed, there would be a lot of laws that just wouldn't exist to the description of something. What I think about the laws of logic that make them special is they go past all of that. They are still valid even if nothing exists. They are still valid in any reality that you can invent in your head, regardless of whether or not the reality is possible. And now I have seen people take like mathematical questions or equations, and they say, well, look, this seems to violate like the law of identity or excluded middle. And they start out by, let's say 2 equals 0 or 0 equals 2. And then you say what is 1 plus, or what's maybe 2 divided by 1, and that equals 1. And now we've divided by 0, because but when you take something like that, because math is a language to describe quantifications that exist in reality, and you can come up with things on paper, and if there's nothing in reality that can represent what comes up on paper, then it's not particularly useful to me in any way, And
well, you're saying a lot of things there that I want to pick into for a whole show. I want to talk to you about maths and reality, and I want to talk to you about logic and its relationship to, because you used an expression which I loved, because you said you can imagine it. It happens in your mind where you can imagine everything. And can we, at this stage, I mean, I'm a strict timekeeper, because the show is called Free Thought Hour. And when I'm fishing for guests, I offer them an hour. I don't want to keep them for 3 hours and discourage any future guests from getting trapped with us on our show.
No. I got plenty of time. I cleared the day.
Well,
for this.
I'm sorry, whether you got plenty of time or not, that's irrelevant. This show is an hour show, so that my future guests know that they can spare an hour, and they won't be expected to spare any more. So I just want to say something about Otangelo Grasso, who, hi, Otangelo, thank you for watching us. I'm not going to let you do your usual attempted thing, though, Otangelo. Let me just explain to everyone that Otangelo is how should I describe him? He's a Christian. He's Brazilian. No, he's not Brazilian, but he lives in Brazil. I think he came from Central Europe somewhere. And he's got his own show, or his own blog, and he's got pages and pages of stuff on there, and he frequently quotes himself, and he's got his own way of justifying the Christian God. Although actually, in his most recent post on Facebook, he put something which was less of an assertion than he's previously put. So maybe we'll get him back on the show one day and see whether he's changing his mind. I don't know. Anyway, that's enough of that. Sorry?
I would like to. I was going to say I'd like to have Otangelo if he can bring the Shroud of Turin. That would be interesting. So, as in physics, get it from the Pope or whoever keeps it. But as far as
can I just say, he's putting stuff up here in the messages.
I just want to say something.
And I don't want, because he'll take over the show, divert it down rabbit holes that we don't intend it to go down. So bad luck, Otangelo. I'm not going to screen much of your stuff. Carry on.
I didn't even. I just now. See the comments here. I just see the comments here. That's okay. I got. How can matter become conscious and starting to understand language and logic?
Don't go there, because that's a whole show. And I've had Otangelo on before, and it's a very unproductive exercise. Sorry, Otangelo. Yes. Who's this? Rayvon, thank you for watching us. I think I agree with you. Yes. He's a nice guy. He can't help what he is, I like it. Angela, you're a boner guy. Bless you. And just at that moment, she freezes.
I think I must just keep my mouth shut and just watch you guys, because it's so frustrating.
It is a bit, isn't it? Yes. So
it's terrible.
What I'd like to do now, Jason, with your agreement, because I prepared a 20-minute presentation on this issue, that because we were interacting on Facebook, and we were agreeing with each other a lot, and then we got to an area where I took issue with something, and we politely disagreed, and we worked out that we could have a conversation without becoming offended.
Yes, that's one of the reasons that I like you a lot.
Yeah, so many of the people on the internet, they're precious, aren't they? And
Yeah,
and if
yeah.
they don't get, they're dogmatic. They won't let go of their ideas, and if they don't get their way, they storm out and slam the door. Well, I'm not like that. I think Otangelo would agree with me there. So what I'd like to do, anyway, I've prepared this presentation, and it's a slideshow, but I've voiced over it, so it's a video.
Sure.
And what I'd like to do is play it through.
Okay.
We'll watch and listen. And if you've got some points of, criticism, disagreement, comment,
Sure.
suggestion, can I suggest that you make a note of the slide that?
I'm getting my notepad ready right now.
Yeah, because then we could revisit it and
Beautiful.
deal with your comments. Okay.
Excellent. Perfect.
Right. So I'm going to screen it now.
Okay.
Okay. So somewhere here, there's a go button. Yeah, this is it. Here we go. I want to start by declaring that I am not a trained philosopher, but that doesn't stop me from thinking. And I'm not intending to knock logic. Logic is the best thinking tool. And when we have no evidence for a proposition, it is the only rational reasoning to support pursuing a particular policy. My intention is to flag up its limitations. Before the Renaissance, thought was considered to be supreme. Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle had come up with the rules of rational reasoning: deduction, induction, and abduction. They asserted that everything should be grounded in thought, a priori. What is a priori? It's relating to or denoting reasoning or knowledge which proceeds from theoretical deduction rather than from observation or experience. It's knowledge that can be obtained without experience of the outside world. It's the idea that your internal thoughts alone can provide you with a priori knowledge. It's armchair thinking. Renaissance philosophers realized that thinking alone cannot be guaranteed to give a conclusive explanation. They realized that the mind/brain is continuous with the extracranial realm. They invented natural philosophy, the checking of thoughts by conducting investigations to gather observations to determine whether the thoughts matched reality. I contend they were more right than some present-day philosophers give them credit for. Today, we know that thought happens in isolated locations, in brains. Let's call it the conceptual realm, the place where thinking happens. Natural philosophy, now called the scientific method, is the seeking of observations external to the brain to confirm or deny the thoughts. And every new discovery of the last 200 years or more has supported the effectiveness of this strategy. So the idea that thoughts are one category and the universe is another is increased in credibility since the Renaissance. We now know that brains are isolated. We have the theory of mind, which is the ability to recognize that others have a brain like ours, even though we have no direct access to their thoughts. And there's no evidence for telekinesis or psychokinesis, so no actual link between what goes on inside craniums and what goes on outside of craniums. We think minds/brains have no limits. I've got a clip that I'm going to show here by Professor Sophie Scott, who is the director of the Faculty of Neuroscience at the University College of London.
So I'm going to tell you 10 things you need to know about brains. Spoiler alert, there are more than 10, but the first one is that you get one. When I look at this picture of me as a little girl here on the left, that's me around age 2.5, 3. And every single bit of that little girl isn't there anymore. And I don't mean metaphorically because now she's a woman. I mean, literally, there's a cycle of death and rebirth in body parts throughout your whole life. You get about a whole new body roughly every 10 years, which is when you get a whole new skeleton. Much of the rest of it regenerates much more quickly, except for 4 parts of your body, okay? If you're female, the gametes, your ova, you are born with those. You have those all your life. The cells in the crystalline lens in your eye, you have those all your life. You're born with them. You have them your whole life. The cells in your ear, the hair cells that turn sound into electricity the brain can process, you have those your whole life. And your physical brain. The cells that make up your brain, you have them for your whole life. You don't get new bits of the brain as you get older. There is one critical potential change to this, addition to this, I'll say right at the end. But I think that's worth bearing in mind. This is your brain. Anything you learn, anything that changes about you, anything you learn from today is because your brain itself has changed to reorganize to learn that knowledge. And as far as we can tell, there is no known limit to how much information the human brain can store. So this massive brain that you have, and you have about 86 billion brain cells, make this extraordinary network that can remodel and change itself continually to store information, to change, to reflect all the experiences you've had.
She says, as you will see, there's no known limit to what the brain can store, and it's reasonable to assume that there is, similarly, no known limit to what it can conceptualize. What form would such a limit take? A maximum tally count? A boundary wall? How would violation of such a limit be prevented? So there's 2 categories. And despite being based on some axioms which cannot be proven a priori by thought alone, science has built a tower of effective understanding based on a posteriori evidence. And this calls into question the relative value of a priori and a posteriori justification. So I contend that inferences, the outcomes of thinking, remain in the conceptual realm. Philosophy is firmly in the thought arena, its associations of ideas, and I contend that no matter how strong the association, it's just an idea. An inference remains in the conceptual arena and confirms nothing about how our universe functions on its own. Significant doubt remains until matching observations have come in. There's plenty of examples of hypotheses, mental models, that got substantiated or falsified by investigations resulting in observations. For example, relativity, the Higgs boson, and gravity waves. So, with the 2 realms theory thus firmly established, what is the utility of logic? Logic is in the conceptual arena. It's the best kind of thought, but it is non-contingent with the extracranial universe. There is no dependent relationship between thought and the rest of the cosmos. Put another way, the universe doesn't exist to make us happy, and thinking is just modeling. We're not the lead actor in this scenario. The cosmos has that role. We're merely in the audience. So, actually is science. It's a method of checking thoughts by investigating for matching observations. It's stage 2 of discovery. Please don't miss out stage 2. You haven't finished the job when you have finished conceptualizing. All you've arrived at is an inference, a thought. And science is about being wrong. The idea is to get progressively less wrong over time. And even logic can be wrong. It's not necessarily representative of the universe, and I'm not even talking about logical paradoxes. Also, I'm assuming that the premises are sound and the reasoning is valid. I'm giving logic the benefit of the doubt here. Now take a look at a posteriori. Since the Renaissance, science has revealed its power. There's a semi-autonomous helicopter on Mars. Millions of people are alive today that wouldn't otherwise be. AI is rearing its head. So, despite being based on some axioms which cannot be proven a priori by thought alone, science has built a tower of effective understanding based on a posteriori evidence. A posteriori wins. So, why is logic not necessarily representative of the universe? It's absolute and it's polar. So, we can have those concepts as ideas, but they've not been observed in the natural realm. We have found nothing absolute, and we have failed to make anything absolute. And no so far observed systems are 100% binary. Instead, there are ranges between extremes. Even energy and matter are interchangeable, and both have a spectrum of manifestations. So, since the Renaissance, we have accepted that observations, a posteriori evidence, trumps thoughts, a priori evidence. Now let's take a look at the law of identity. What does it mean? It asserts that an entity is what it is and not what it isn't. And we can hold that concept as a thought, but it's not observable outside of heads.
Did it freeze? Did my sound go up?
Can you hear me? Am I audible? Uitgaan en ek gaan.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We don't want to hear you. This is constantly turning.
Go.
I've moved it back because you were talking over it, and that's not the point. I wanted you to hear it. Okay?
I can't hear it. I can't hear it.
You
I
can't
can't
hear it.
No, I was trying to tell you that. I kept going like this. I can't hear it. It's like the sound stopped somewhere around 12 minutes and 30 seconds when you were talking about.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Why would that be? Because I can hear it, and that's very weird. What a bugger. Let me try and play it again and see from. Tell me if you wave if you can hear it here.
Okay.
100% binary. Instead, there are ranges between extremes. Even energy and matter are interchangeable, and both have a spectrum of manifestations. So, since the Renaissance, we have accepted that observations, a posteriori evidence, trumps thought, a priori evidence. Now let's take a look at the law of identity. What does it mean? It asserts that an entity is what it is and not what it isn't. And we can hold that concept as a thought, but it's not observable outside of heads. Out there, everything is unstoppably changing and becoming something else. There are no static instances in which that statement can be true. Language is a fantastic communication vehicle, but it's entirely fabricated for our convenience. Verbs have tenses because that's how we perceive life in terms of was, is, and will be. And I contend that is a useful fiction, but a fiction nonetheless. It assumes there is a static moment of unchanging now. There is no such thing in the macro reality where we live. The conveyor belt of time doesn't stop, cannot be stopped. So nothing remains as it is for an instant. But firstly, it's always observed as it was 300 milliseconds ago, and upon the next observation, it will be different. Everything is changing, and there are no static instants. There is no same as, no is. There is only was and will be. The challenge is from Jason Jewell. He says that if I can demonstrate that something isn't what it is, then he'll pay me $5,000. Here I go. I contend that I have demonstrated that nothing is what it is in reality, because there are no moments for isness to exist in. There are simply no static moments in reality for a thing to be what it is. On the contrary, everything is constantly turning into what it isn't. And this cannot be interrupted to show a frame of it being what it is. It's not a movie. It's not film with, frames. The only place where we can do this, where we can freeze a frame, is in the conceptual realm, where anything can be imagined. Anything is possible. So, to meet the request to identify something that is what it isn't, or rather isn't what it is, I give you everything. Not only do I meet the challenge to show a thing, I exceed it by naming everything. Now, do we have a right of understanding by thought alone? No. That would be going back to pre-Renaissance philosophy with no stage two, no checking of thoughts by seeking congruence with observations. And if you look at quantum theory, that would suggest not. There's no right of understanding by thought. Investigating quantum equations shows that they very accurately predict what's going to happen despite being counterintuitive and illogical. So this is the mismatch. This is the problem for logicians. Time is a procession of changes. Nothing is what it is for even an instant. There's no static instance, no is. Everything is becoming what it isn't, unstoppably, continuously, relentlessly. So the law of identity doesn't match reality. It's like trying to force a slope to become a staircase. The next unreal static is step will never be a perfect fit. It can be improved by making the steps smaller, but it's a thought technique for recognizing similarities and differences that can't ever be perfectly reconciled with the natural realm. Remember, I'm not disrespecting logic as a useful approximation for making mental models. So, to recap, the only way identity can be deemed to be the same as itself is if you restrict the discussion to solely within the conceptual realm and make it about the names of entities rather than their material existence. Names, of course, are merely part of the useful but unreal human fabrication that is language. Because, whereas in the conceptual realm, we can imagine a state that is limitless and timeless, that doesn't exist in the natural realm, where nothing is what it is for even an instant, because there aren't any instants. No, everything is relentlessly becoming what it isn't. Is continuously, unstoppably turning into not is. So the law of identity doesn't match reality. It's a thought technique for recognizing similarities and differences, but it can't ever be perfectly reconciled with the natural realm. Remember, I'm not disrespecting logic as a useful approximation in thought, but I contend that focusing too much on logic is a trap that philosophers may fall into. Understandably, they love their specialism and they want to be loyal to it, but there is a universe outside of our heads, and that's the authority, not us. However thoughtful and logical we may be, we're ants trying to understand the sky. Sadly, our thoughts cannot be contingent with reality. The universe doesn't depend on them or on us. We can merely use thinking to make models that attempt to describe the universe in a different system, a system that we call logic. Logic is like French to the cosmos's English. It's a translation, not a transcription. It can never be cipher perfect. And if it ever does get to be perfect, we won't know until there are no tomorrows. So I contend I've shown that logic is non-contingent with reality. I state again, I have not rubbished logic. It's still the best thinking tool we have. I have merely pointed out that it is non-contingent with reality. Thank you for your attention. I'm sorry that we lost the sound earlier on. I worked out
that's
why.
okay. That's okay. That's okay. So
what I'll do is I'll edit this and chop out that bit where we.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. So so when you say logic is non-contingent with reality, I actually agree with that. Reality requires logic. Reality requires logic. But there are a couple of things that I wouldn't agree with. So this whole idea of relying too much on logic, because what if something in logic is wrong? Logic doesn't say, there's nothing in logic that says if you find a mistake in logic, keep it. Logic says if you find a mistake somewhere, you would change it. But there's a couple other problems here. Thinking about.
Can I pick up on the second thing that you said?
Yes.
Which was that reality requires logic.
Yes.
I disagree.
Yeah, well, I know you're saying no, but I'm saying any type of reality cannot exist without logic. But not only that, I'd go one step further, that because it is possible, our minds can imagine impossible things. That doesn't mean if something is impossible, our mind can imagine it. For example, the reason why the laws of logic are the way that they are, and I also have to talk about this claim to knowledge, because neither science or logic makes any claims to knowledge. It's not about that. Logic doesn't tell you what is true. Logic tells you, if you believe this and if you believe this, then you must believe this, otherwise you're being irrational. But it doesn't say this is true or that is true.
No.
Logic is internally consistent. So there's something called a hard problem of philosophy. And these problems are much different than a normal problem. Whereas, like, I don't know what the answer to this problem is, but I could imagine what an answer would look like. You know, I know that it's impossible to defy the laws of gravity and just fly. And if you could just fly, we would know that there was something about the laws of gravity that allowed you to do that you maybe not are familiar with. The thing is,
the laws of gravity have been constructed by us observing how things behave in gravity.
Yes.
They are not constraining, and they are purely descriptive. And in fact, our description has changed because Newton had a bash.
Yes.
And he got it.
But what the laws actually are, they don't change. And that's what logic is.
You're assuming that the universe has laws intrinsically.
Wait, hold on. I am assuming that there are observations that we can make in the universe that seem to be universally applying on a specific level, and we call those laws. But the laws of logic are different from the laws of physics.
Hang on. Let me unpack that back a little bit.
Yeah.
I agree with what you just said, that we observe and formulate what we call the laws, but I don't agree that they are intrinsic in the universe.
Yeah, what do you mean when you say intrinsic? Like what do you mean? Because you use the statement of conceptual realm, and I think because the definitions of realm, what's your definition of a realm?
I could use the word arena too. I'm talking about a distinct category.
What is the literal description of what you mean a realm is?
Well, I'm talking about, in the case of the mind, I'm talking about an isolated category.
Like inside my car is a realm?
Well, I don't see how that's relevant. No.
Would you consider the inside of my car a realm?
I wouldn't use the word realm to apply to the inside of your car. No.
What? So
No,
what makes the
no,
mind different than the car?
because the mind is somewhere that concepts can be conceptualized and cannot
Yes.
communicate directly with outside. So you can't tell me what I'm thinking.
But that's not the case. The human mind can communicate with the outside directly. That's what our senses are. That's what sight is. That's what taste is. We can communicate.
That's input. It's not between you and I.
That is what communication is. It's an exchange between concepts, ideas, and thoughts and language. That's what communication is. It's a way for me to get what's inside here to inside there.
That's talking, that's language. But at the moment, did you know that I have got a pain in my right foot? You didn't, did you?
No, but that's
And
that doesn't.
until we get USB ports in our spine, we are not going to be able to communicate thoughts.
No, that's incorrect. We can right now, without a USB to our spine, see what's happening in our head. Furthermore, we can just stick an electromagnetic like little sticky pad and make your arm go up and down and predict before you can tell me whether you're going to put your arm up and down. We know whether you're thinking yes and no.
Yes, indeed.
And a thought is a physical thing. They're called axons. And they have these things that come out. They're like little lightning pieces called dendrites. Yes. Physical things.
You're preaching to the converted here. I am a biology teacher, so I do know all of that.
Okay. I'm not sure what you mean by realm then.
Well, the thing is that what we cannot do, we can translate our thoughts into words, and I can tell you what I'm thinking, and you can hear my words and translate that into your thoughts of your interpretation of what I'm telling you.
Correct.
What we can't do, even though I grant you there's wonderful non-invasive technology that enables us to look at the brain in action in fMRI machines using harmless radioactive chemicals in circulation and so on and so forth. We know that this can be done. There's even a skull cap with very strong light that can look through the bone and watch what the brain is doing on the surface, but there's no interference between the two. At the moment,
between
at the moment, you can't make me think anything, and I can't make you think anything.
That's incorrect.
I'm speaking to a magician who thinks he can make people think things.
Well, no. That's in a very real sense, that is quite possible. Now you can prevent me from doing that by, say, plugging your ears. But once I say a word that you understand, your brain cannot produce the image without understanding what that word is.
But that's not the same. That's not the same as me giving you my thought. That can't be done. We are isolated within our heads.
No, I'm not saying we give each other thoughts. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I can tell you what my thoughts are, and you can know what those are to a specific degree of confidence. But that's irrelevant to the laws of logic.
The laws of logic are thoughts. The universe.
No, incorrect.
You think it's incorrect because you think that those laws are so perfect that they really match 100%.
No, that's not why. That's not why. No, and I wouldn't say and I would not claim that they match 100%. I claim to have a reasonable justification that they do, but I make no claims to absolute certainty. But I do know that you haven't demonstrated a violation of any of the laws of logic in any way, shape, or form.
So I can tell you. I contend that I have by showing up the mismatch between the natural realm, where the conveyor belt of time cannot be stopped,
Yeah.
and the thoughts inside our head where we can imagine the time that time doesn't exist. We can
Yes,
imagine. We can
yeah.
imagine yesterday. We can
That
imagine
doesn't
tomorrow.
violate any laws of logic. Which law does that violate?
The law that says that a thing is what it is and isn't what it
Yeah.
isn't. Because
And what are
in order
you
for
pointing
that
out?
to
What are you pointing out that isn't what it is?
everything, because nothing is what it is, because
Can you
time cannot be.
give me a specific example of
I
something that
am. I'm
isn't
giving
what
you
it
the
is?
example of everything, because everything is changing. Look out of the
Yeah,
windows.
but the fact that something is changing doesn't violate the law of logic. Any
Well,
of
it
them.
does. It does, because for a thing to be what it is,
Yes.
we need a moment of isness. And there
Yes.
isn't a moment of isness,
That's
because
incorrect.
there is no now. Think about it.
It doesn't.
When
It does.
is
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter because even when you take it there, you either have an object that is never the same as what it is, or you don't. One of the two.
and what you're holding there.
It is. This is either an object that is always in changing. It's always changing, or it's not an
So,
object that's always changing. The law
so,
of
so
identity doesn't say that nothing changes. It says
no,
things
no.
are what they are and they're not what they're not.
So what you're saying there, then, you're
You
either
described
saying,
what they are, and you're saying they're not that.
okay. So what you're saying there, then, is that in our heads we can have things that are what they are, and also you're saying that.
In our heads, we can have thoughts that is a model
Yeah.
of what is in reality, and it is
Mhm,
accurate to varying degrees.
mhm.
And we
I
can
like that.
demonstrate, yeah, we could demonstrate the level of justification of these degrees. Oh, go ahead.
But but while you were holding up your cigarette packet, it was
Yes.
becoming slowly, in the case of that
Yes.
particular item,
Yep.
not your cigarette packet.
No, things don't become what they're not. They can become what they're going to be.
Well, in that case, what you are doing is restricting the concept of is to the name that you are giving that item.
Yes. Is one thing that is always with what it is. Always.
And that's the only way in which the law of identity can be deemed to be correct. If you restrict the meaning
Yes, it applies to everything.
merely to the name of the thing and not
No,
the
it's not
physical.
restricted to the name because it would still apply if names didn't exist.
Well, it could in your head, but it can't in reality, because everything in reality is irresistibly,
Yes, you can have a
unstoppably.
thought. Yes, you can have a thought in your head that no one has put a name to. That doesn't violate any law of logic.
Well, the problem here is what you have just described is purely conceptual and doesn't match reality.
I
Because
have described a concept, and that
yes,
concept,
yeah,
if it's correct, it is part of reality, and if it's not,
no,
it's not part of reality.
no, it doesn't match reality, because I don't disagree with your claim. I claim it too, that you can have isness as a concept. Where I am,
I don't know what that means. You can't have isness as a concept. Are you saying you're
no,
using a
no,
word
no,
right now and you don't know
yeah,
the
no,
concept of it?
hold on, you got it wrong. I'm not disagreeing that we can have isness as a concept. What I am saying is, outside of the conceptual realm, there is no
Okay.
isness.
Yes, that is true.
In the
Yeah,
natural realm,
you're talking about the language that we're using, but you're
yeah,
not talking about, there's two things. There
oh,
are the laws of logic, and then there is the language that we have to discuss them.
no, no. You, by saying that, you're claiming that the universe knows logic
No,
and owns it, and it's intrinsic.
no, that's incorrect.
to-
That's incorrect. No, because just because it's part of the one doesn't mean it's part of the whole. Our universe, our brain is part of the universe. The natural existence. It is still
Granted,
part of the universe.
granted, but it doesn't have.
It doesn't mean it is the universe.
No, no, well, I'm not trying to make out that it is, but what I'm saying is that our brain has a freedom that enables it to conceptualize wildly states that do not exist in reality.
True.
And therefore, we can conceptualize isness, which reality doesn't contain, because everything is changing outside of our brains. And so,
Our brains are no, our everything inside of our brains is changing too.
yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that we have freedom of thought. Our brains are weird organs that can, although they
yeah,
are entirely natural, I accept that they are entirely natural, but they don't have the limitations of nature. We
they
can
don't
think,
have the limitation. What do you mean? They don't
I
have the
mean,
limitations of nature.
I mean,
Go,
what I
go
mean
there.
is, what I mean is that we
Our
can
brains
think,
come from nature.
yes, I'm not, I'm not arguing with the naturalness of brains. I'm saying that brains
Yeah,
are not constrained, that we can think of things that don't exist,
our
including
brains are not constrained. Our brains are not constrained by what?
they are unlimited in their thinking power. We can think of things that don't exist. We can think of things that used to exist.
Okay,
Things
okay,
that,
so being able to think of things that don't exist is not in relation to the power of our thinking. But to say that we have unlimited thinking power, there's a couple of problems with that. First, it's kind of a colloquialism because obviously we don't produce energy or power with our brain. Secondly, we use all of our brain for thinking. There's not a part of our brain that we just don't use.
yeah,
Um,
and this is not about the anatomy of the brain. This is about the the the, the conceptual nature of thought. This is
yeah,
about there not being a maximum tally of where we can go with our thoughts, or there being
that's
a
true. But
boundary
you
wall.
put one on. You put one on it. I'm not claiming to know the limits of our thinking, but you're saying that there are no limits.
Yes, I'm saying that we can think up anything.
How do you demonstrate something like that?
It's difficult to demonstrate, I grant you, but look at
I
it
would
the
say
other
it's
way around.
impossible.
It might be, but look at it the other way around. What constraint, what break could there be that would
You can't
prevent
break the
you?
laws of logic, even with your imagination, and you haven't. Let me give you another. I can give you another one. They're called the hard problems of philosophy. There's a few of them. I can give you a question. You can't just not answer it. You can't even tell me what an answer would even be like or look like.
Sure,
Simple
sure.
ones.
And that's
Solipsism. Well, what if I wake you up in a reality, in another reality? I say, listen, this reality you're living, it's not the real one.
and
This
that's
is a fake reality. And I wake you up in the matrix and
yeah,
you're like, oh my God, wow, that wasn't the real reality. Let's say a
yeah,
week goes by and I do it again. And then a
mm,
week goes by and I do it again.
sure,
So the question is,
yeah,
what reality can you wake up in and not ask the question,
mm,
is
mm.
this the real reality? Which
And
which it we don't have a solution to hard solipsism.
you're
Just like
doing my,
we don't have the solution to this logic problem. It's called the problem of induction. That's what that means.
yes, you're doing my job for me. You are pointing out that there is no limit to what we can think. We can think that this isn't the reality.
That is the
In a
limit.
different reality.
You can't that is the limit. That is the limit. You can't violate those rules.
What rules?
You can't you that you're unable to describe to me a circumstance in which one of the laws of logic are broken?
I have. I've demonstrated to you that the law of identity is
There's
so
nothing.
broken.
There's nothing you.
It's
There's nothing you pointed
it's so
to that wasn't
it's
what
so
it is.
it's so broken. It's never true.
You repeat that, but what specifically is not what it is? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, okay.
Because you
What?
can't say, because you're describing this as something that's always changing. Is it
Yes.
not something that's always changing? Or is it something that's always changing?
Well, what you're trying to do there is get out of this by
No,
going into
you're
the
putting a
conceptual realm.
rule on something. What you're saying is, in order for something to be something, it can never change. That's what you're saying.
No. I'm saying that the reality is everything is changing because there is
Yes.
time, and
That is
therefore
correct.
there is no moment. You can't stop time. Therefore, there is no moment for
That's
anything
incorrect.
that is to still be is. It's always not stopped, but in the unstoppable process of becoming what it isn't.
Things
So there
change.
is no moment. There is no moment at all, because there are no moments. They're all continuously, unstoppably moving. There's no moment.
Yeah.
I mean, let's examine the concept of now. Okay.
Sure.
Is it when let's speed up the camera? Is it when I say no or when I say ow?
Yeah,
Which
sure. I
of
get what you're
those-
saying. I get what you're saying.
Which of those instances was the now? And you will find
Yeah, the question is
however
fallacious.
small you slice up time.
No, I
there's
would
not
find
a
the
moment-
question to be fallacious. No, I would find the question to be fallacious. It's nonsensical. The question itself is flawed. What you're doing, what I can tell you, okay, I want to discuss a specific period of time, which is this or this or this. But what you're doing is trying to look for some specific entity to call now. What does now mean? It means nothing. It is a subjective term to describe a predetermined amount of time. There is no now. That's now. That doesn't exist.
Well,
You're describing
I-
time incorrectly.
I would contend that there is no predetermined amount of time. There's no authority that could say
No,
now is.
I agree. I agree.
Mm.
But you're
Well,
saying
I
there
was in the middle of a sentence, so there is no authority that can say now is a microsecond, or now is a century, or now is a millennium. There are no fixtures of units here.
That's correct.
What you're saying is that you're agreeing with me in effect by saying that since there's no now, there's no isness, and so nothing
No,
is what it
incorrect,
is. It's
incorrect.
always in the way of on the route
Incorrect,
to
incorrect.
becoming what it is.
That's the leap. That is the leap that you're making. That is not correct. That's
No,
the
it's
leap.
not. It is correct, because that's the reality. That is what is actually happening.
Well,
The
repeating
only
it isn't
place,
going to do
the
anything.
only place where we can have stopped time is in here, and
Incorrect.
that's where.
Incorrect.
where-
That's a false
that's-
equivocation.
That's
That is a
where-
false equivocation fallacy. We don't stop
that's
time.
where-
Incorrect.
That's where we can have the
Incorrect.
law of identity. And it's
Incorrect.
only in
Incorrect.
there. Only in
Incorrect. Incorrect. You don't stop time in your head. You could think about stopping time
there.
in
No,
your
no,
head.
you don't physically stop time in your head, of course not. But you can.
Okay, then
that's
re-say
only-
what you were saying. Re-say what you were saying again, but don't say we stop time in our head. We could think about stopping time in our head, which doesn't mean we could violate the law of logic in our head, but go ahead.
Well, you can conceptualize stopped time.
You're saying that nothing can be an is, right?
Yes.
Okay, but you're also saying that something can be what it is and what it isn't.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in reality, you can't have anything that is itself, because it's always.
Hold on.
everything
You
in-
just hold on. Here's the problem with logic. In order to try to prove them false, you have to assume their validity, assume they're true to try to use them. And here's the problem that creates in your discussion. You say this, what this is nothing can be is. So you're applying it and then attempting to say it doesn't exist.
Right, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No. You're playing into my hands. You're playing into my hands here, because what you're saying. Let me get this right. What you're recognizing is that the reality is that there are no moments of is. There's no moments for. There are no moments.
But you're just repeating that statement.
Well, that's because you haven't got it. The only place we can conceive of there being an isness and a moment and an instant that's static is in our heads, where we can conceive of anything like another reality.
No, hold on. Yeah, yes, I agree. I can imagine a moment where time stops.
Yeah,
I can imagine that because I can imagine things that are impossible. Which doesn't mean you have to prove that. Here's the thing: demonstrating something impossible we can think of does not demonstrate something we can think of that is impossible. That's called a fallacy of affirming the consequent. You're affirming the antecedent. There you go. That's the fallacy you're making.
Well, I'm unconvinced.
You're making a fallacy. You might be convinced, but you're not demonstrating it.
What you have told me,
you're using the definition of is as one thing and then violating it and then showing nowhere else where it applies. And even if your description of is was correct, the law of identity would still be true, even if your description that I disagree with was true. That's the crazy part about it.
No.
Because things either have isness or they don't. And you can say that without even knowing what you mean by isness. Because what you're saying is isness is when time stops. And that's not what isness is.
There you go. You see, there you go. You've moved the whole discussion entirely into the conceptual realm and agreed with me that it doesn't match reality.
No. Here's the thing. You don't move a discussion into a conceptual realm because it doesn't leave a conceptual realm. Okay, it doesn't leave your concepts. It's in your brain. And the conceptual realm is really just a colloquial way to say your brain. Our consciousness is what is the label that we use to describe what our brain does.
And again, you've gone into my conceptual realm by using the word label. You see, the universe doesn't know the word label.
I never said it did. Nothing that I says requires me to say that or is even contingent on that. It doesn't matter. I know that the universe isn't a thinking entity, and there's nothing about what I'm saying that requires that. It doesn't matter. There's a plant here, and it's part of the universe. I'm not the plant. I'm here. I'm part of the universe, and I'm not part of the plant. We both exist in reality.
We've sorry about this, Jason, because we have overrun time, and I'm going to chop out that bit where it was gone silent from my presentation. But I think
that's okay. That's okay.
I think what you should do when I've chopped it out is watch my presentation again, and then you will see that while we can think up labels and we can think up mental models and we can think up connections and associations of ideas, none of those things match reality necessarily.
Yes, because a dichotomy is still a dichotomy regardless of the word that you use to describe it.
Yeah. Okay.
They still exist regardless of the label we use.
Yeah, and I would say that logic is entirely in here, and
the language of logic and the evaluation of logic is entirely in our brains.
Yeah.
But what it's evaluating, but that's not logic. That's not logic.
What it's evaluating is outside, and it isn't a good match.
That's what logic is.
Because what is happening outside is continuous change, not isness and continuous sameness.
And our brains are in everything is continuous change.
Forget the fact that our brains are natural. It's the way we think that is isn't restricted by naturalism.
That's not something you've demonstrated.
This is why we can think of Humpty Dumpty, and why we can think of
Yes, that's not violating. That's not violating any laws of naturalism.
No, of course it isn't. No, I'm just giving you examples of the freedom of thought. We can think of
we have crazy freedom of thought.
What are those?
It doesn't allow us to do things that are impossible.
Daleks. I was trying to think of Daleks. There is no limit to what we can conceptualize, and it has no necessary or essential congruence with actual physical material reality. That's what I've demonstrated.
I don't think you did. I think the argument was quite fallacious.
Well, watch it again.
Quite a few fallacies, actually. But did you have any questions for me, Tercia?
Oh, I have so many. It was so interesting. I'm going to finish off because I think my phone is at 5% and I have to go into another room.
Okay.
I just want to say, I'm completely intrigued. I have quite a few questions. The fact that you got John to break his 1 hour rule is absolutely an indication that the laws of logic might be broken.
Well, the next time John uses the word "is," he's going to be referring to something that is in change. In practice, he will use it that way.
So I've got lots of questions, and I think we should continue this. And next time, I'll hopefully have a much better connection. And because I have many questions to both of you guys, I'm going to listen again, and I'm going to certainly have some questions. Yes.
Let me cut out that blank bit first before we watch it again.
But Justin, please make contact with me as well. I have quite a number of questions.
Yes, you can get a hold of me through John, I believe.
Yeah, sure.
My husband is sitting next to me, and I think he will agree that tonight is miraculous because you got me to be quiet and listen. So.
I appreciate that. But
thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. It was nice. It was nice seeing you, John. I hope we get to do this again. It was very fun.
It was fun, wasn't it? I enjoyed it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Tercia. Thank you, viewers. And thank you, future viewers. Wave goodbye.
Right, take care, guys.
Bye. Jason Jewell.